Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Berkeley City College and the 2024 Berkeley Mayoral Forum. My name is Denise Richardson, and it is my great pleasure to serve as the president here at Berkeley City College. We are thrilled to have you here with us this evening as we engage in this important conversation about the future of our beloved city here in Berkeley. I want to acknowledge our co-sponsor, the League of Women Voters of Berkeley, Albany, and Emeryville. And thank them for their invaluable partnership in making this event possible. I also want to express appreciation to the entire League of Women Voters team and to the BCC team for taking such great care of the logistical details of tonight's forum. Now for a few housekeeping details. Number one, please remain as quiet as possible while the candidates are speaking so that everyone may hear, and please hold your applause until the forum has ended so that the candidates will have the greatest amount of possible time to get their points across. Number two, please turn off and silence your cell phones and any other electronic devices. Next, we will hear from our distinguished mayoral candidates and gain insights into their visions for Berkeley. So at this time, I'd like to welcome to the stage our moderator, Ashley McBride, a reporter with the Oakland Side. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here with us tonight, September 26th, for the Berkeley Mayoral Candidates Forum. My name is Ashley McBride, and I cover education equity at the Oakland Side. I'll be moderating this forum for the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not support or oppose candidates or parties. The advocacy arm of the League may take positions on issues such as ballot measures. However, this forum is presented by the Voter Services and Education arm of the League, which does not take positions or advocate for them. I'd like to remind everyone that the candidates have all agreed to participate under the ground rules set for this forum. These ground rules are posted both inside and outside of the auditorium. Candidates and audience members are not permitted to display campaign buttons, T-shirts, signs, etc. inside the auditorium in order to maintain neutrality. The co-sponsors of tonight's forum are the Association of American University Women and Berkeley City College. This forum is being live streamed by Berkeley Community Media to YouTube. We are recording tonight's forum, and the session will be available on our website, lwvbae.org, and our YouTube channel. There are 5 candidates for Berkeley Mayor. They are Logan Bowie, Sophie Hahn, Kate Harrison, Adina Ishii, and Naomi D. Pete. The position of mayor is decided through ranked choice voting. Voters can, but aren't required, to indicate their first, second, third, fourth, and fifth choice for an office. With ranked choice voting, the candidate who receives a majority of votes will be declared the winner. Your ballot will not be valid if you vote for the same candidate more than once. Although there will be 5 candidates listed on your November ballot for this position, Naomi Pete and Logan Bowie could not attend the forum tonight. So let's go over the ground rules. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening remarks. The order was determined by drawing lots earlier tonight. The timekeeper will signal candidates with a green-colored paddle when 1 minute has passed, a yellow-colored paddle when there are 30 seconds left, a yellow-colored paddle when there are 15 seconds left, and then a red stop paddle when the full 2 minutes is up. As people signed up via Eventbrite, they had the opportunity to submit questions for the candidates. If you have additional questions, you may write them on the index cards that were handed out when you entered the auditorium. You can raise your hand if you have a question. Our volunteers will take the index cards and pass them to the question sorter. All questions will be screened to avoid duplication and personal attacks. The order of answering the questions will be randomized, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Again, the timekeeper will signal the candidates. There will be no separate rebuttals, but the candidates may choose to use some or all of their 1 minute to rebut the response given by another candidate. Following the questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. All right, are you all ready?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to start with opening statements, and our first opening statement will be from Kate.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the League and the American Association of University Women, of which I've been a longtime member, for holding this forum. I'm running for Berkeley to create a livable city for all. Our city is special, and our diversity is, in fact, our strength. Not just diversity of people, but diversity of ideas, neighborhoods, retail, and economy. What I don't want to see is us ending up like San Francisco, hollowed out because we stuck with one industry. We need this diversity. We do not want Berkeley to turn into a lifeless, soulless suburb just with a lot of apartment buildings. Without a vision, we are going to be led by others. Being mayor requires that vision. We must revive the culture of planning in the city of Berkeley and get away from the culture of development without planning. Each permit now is granted without thinking about how collectively these buildings impact our retail, open space, and cultural and lively art scene. To become real, a vision such as this requires expertise. I manage the $1 billion state court budget. On council, I was able to identify $12 million to pave our streets, fix our parks, and for street safety, all without raising your taxes. A mayor with this vision also requires knowing how to oversee staff. I supervise 60 staff at the state of California, and I've worked closely with our staff, for example, our city attorney, to pass the new Police Accountability Board measure, which 85% of you voted for. Thank you. You need a mayor that knows how the process works for you and council members and makes it as transparent and open as possible. You need a mayor, frankly, who's willing to stand up to moneyed interests. I voted against the UC settlement because we weren't getting a good deal. I passed the vacancy tax and the Uber and Lyft tax. You should not have to bear this entire burden. We also need a mayor who can balance the needs of different constituencies. We must be in charge of our city's destiny, because if we aren't, somebody else will be. I'm not running for the status quo of the Berkeley City Council. I'm running for the future of Berkeley. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. Please hold your applause in between the speeches. Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Sophie.
Is this good? People can hear? So good evening, Berkeley friends. I am grateful for the opportunity to be here with you to discuss the issues that you care about and to share my vision for a more just, equitable, and sustainable Berkeley. Berkeley is more than just a place for me. It's who I am and what I stand for. My parents moved here to embrace civil rights, and I attended Berkeley's first integrated schools. From my father's shoulders, I watched free speech and anti-war protests, and our family embraced recycling, Earth Day, and natural food, newfangled ideas at that time. Inspired by the sense of possibility that electrified this community, I learned early on that freedom, equality, and justice are hard-fought and that the things we do in Berkeley really matter. I believe everyone is worthy of dignity, respect, and a safe and meaningful life. And I believe in the unique power of government to create and protect the common good. This race isn't about who is the most progressive candidate, because everyone here is committed to Berkeley's progressive values. It's about which progressive candidate has been showing up for Berkeley and has a track record of delivering real results for our community. My experience serving Berkeley, starting in high school, is unmatched. 6 years at the PTA most recently, 6 at Planned Parenthood, 6 on the zoning board, 14 years on a library board, and almost 8 years on the city council, where I do still serve. I wrote Berkeley's blueprint for ending homelessness. Unsheltered homelessness is down by 45%. I authored the most far-reaching anti-plastics legislation in the world, And for over 8 years, I engineered the return of the West Berkeley Shell Mound to the Ohlone people, one of the most meaningful things I've done in my life. I thrive on doing good things for Berkeley, and I'm eager to be your next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. And finally, Adina.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Adina. I'm very excited to be here this evening. Thank you so much to our hosts. This is a very special place for me. I actually was a student here at Berkeley City College when I first arrived in Berkeley over 15 years ago. At the time, I was working 3 jobs and really struggling to make ends meet here and be able to just live a successful life here in the city. And unfortunately, today, a lot of our students are facing the same issues that I was facing here as a student. At Berkeley City College, I got involved in politics. I started by organizing my peers on budget cut rallies up to Sacramento against the cuts to education. I got involved with the League of Women Voters and was elected our youngest and first woman of color to serve as president in 107 years. And if elected mayor, I would be our city's first Asian president, Asian mayor. I gave myself a promotion. Our first Asian mayor and our first woman of color to serve as mayor. With the League of Women Voters, I was focused on bringing people together around common sense solutions. It's important that we learn how to compromise so that we can move things forward. And that's really why I'm running for mayor. I'm running for mayor because we need a reset at City Hall. We've had 2 city council members leave, citing broken and toxic local government. And while our city leaders are fighting each other, they're not focused on our problems. The cost of housing is out of control. Our streets and sidewalks are crumbling, and many people don't feel safe walking in their own neighborhoods at night. This is what I'm focused on, the problems that we have in our city. I'm focused on housing and homelessness, public safety, and infrastructure, all practical ideas. And I have the endorsement of State Senator Nancy Skinner, State Assembly Member Buffy Wicks, 4 city council members, as well as many people throughout the city, because they have seen me be a pragmatic leader throughout my time here. I look forward to your questions this evening, and I hope to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. First question. Within your first year, if you're elected, what do you aim to accomplish for your constituents and stakeholders? And we are going to start with Sophie.
Thank you. I think the first thing I want to do as mayor is to reestablish trust and relationships. We are at an inflection point in this country, and it's in this city as well, where people have lost trust in their government. And we also have some bridges to build internally in our organization. So I will spend a lot of my first year on a tour of the entire city, going to every neighborhood, every religious institution, everywhere, listening to the people of Berkeley. That is the first thing I will do. I have the trust of my colleagues. I'm endorsed by 7 members of the City Council and enthusiastically endorsed by the mayor and vice mayor. And I will be quickly moving to create those strong relationships with the council itself so that we can function in a collaborative way and govern this city the way that you expect us to.
Next, we'll go to Kate.
Yes. Thank you for this important question. In my first year, I will hold town halls in every part of the city. We've seen a pattern recently of proposals coming forward to, for example, rezone the city without enough communication with the voters and with the residents of our town. That's not acceptable. I'll reestablish the way that we run meetings to be fair and open to the public rather than the agenda committee trying to move them to 10 a.m. when most of you can't come. I'll make sure that our committee structure is strong and you have a real opportunity to weigh in. And most importantly, I will work with the city manager to make sure that whatever we do has the necessary budget and implementation details associated with it. We need to make sure that what we pass is going to be effective and not just throwing something at the wall thinking it's a good idea. So we need to reestablish that structure, but we also need to start with you, speaking with all of you in the community about how you'd like to see us evolve as a city. Thank you very much.
Okay. Adina.
Thanks. Yeah, so for the last year, That's exactly what I've been doing. I've been going around talking to voters, holding listening sessions, knocking doors. I knock doors every single day so that I can hear from constituents all around the city. And I know the problems that they are focused on. That's why I'm focused on housing and homelessness, public safety, and infrastructure. So in my first year, those are the issues that I'm going to be focused on. I know we're going to be needing to find more funding to fund affordable housing in every Berkeley neighborhood. We have so many folks that are unhoused living on our streets. We need to make sure that we're providing shelters where they can be safe. I don't know if you heard, but there was a shooting at one of our shelters where someone was killed. That is unacceptable for our city to be offering a shelter where people are not safe. I'll also make sure that if we pass Measure F or Measure EE, that we are paving our streets, because there are some basic city services that people just want to see. They are tired of the drama of City Hall. They want to make sure we're focused on our issues, and that's what I'll be doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. What will be your approach to cultivating inclusion and hearing different perspectives when developing public policy and new programs? What will you do to ensure districts can work together thoughtfully so different needs are seriously considered when voting on policy that will impact all residents? And for this question, we'll start with Kate.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. The hallmark of the way that I've worked in the city is working through our community and with organizations. I have close relationships with people in many of our community groups and many of our racial equity, environmental, and tenant groups. We need to build these links. In an example, we need to build links between tenants and homeowners who we traditionally work together to create an affordable city. There's been a divide. You'll notice 2 ballot measures on the ballot this year about rent control. That's because we did not speak to the community, and in fact, one of the members left the meeting early, so we could not vote on a measure 2 years ago. We have 2 road measures. This is tragic that we're in this situation where we have competing ballot measures and we were not able to get to a point of compromise. This is after I left the council. I will make sure that the work that we do brings everyone together at the table, as I did with all of our infrastructure spending, where I added a lot of money for our infrastructure and made sure that our marina and our roads and our parks were taken care of. It requires talking to all stakeholders. Thank you.
Sophie, you're next.
Could you repeat the question? It's a long question.
Sure, yes. What will be your approach to cultivating inclusion and hearing different perspectives when developing public policy and new programs? What will you do to ensure districts work together thoughtfully so that different needs are seriously considered when voting on policy that will impact all residents?
So this is something that I'm already working on. I have been working through the Agenda and Rules Committee to actually completely redo the process of how our city conceives of, vets, and passes legislation. So I wrote guidelines for writing what we call major items, so big policy items, and it specifically says you have to have a whole section about what the outreach is that you did to stakeholders in developing your proposal. Now I'm working on criteria for our committee system, and in that criteria it says that the committees have to identify all the stakeholders who might be interested in a topic, and to actually proactively go out and reach out and invite them to participate in our committee system. I also am committed to going out into the community more. We cannot continue to have a mayor who is mostly in their office. I will be a mayor out in the community all the time, consulting and talking with stakeholders citywide.
Thank you, Adina.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about inclusion, it's important that we're also talking about diversity. Who is it that we're talking about here? I think that this room is actually one of the most diverse rooms that we have seen in our candidate forums, and I think that's significant. I think that it shows that we are not doing enough to make sure we are reaching people and hearing voices that aren't being heard. That is essential in our democracy. It's an essential part of our democracy. I'm also committed to doing town halls and making sure I'm out in the community listening and hearing from people. I also want to acknowledge that the fact that I have a lot of personal experiences with these issues, and these personal experiences are what drive the policy that I have. I have actually talked to people who are unhoused. I've gone out there to the encampments. I've spoken with people who are most impacted by these issues, and I will continue to do that, to bring all stakeholders together around these topics and to talk to people who are most impacted by our policy decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. There are a number of problems confronting the city, including key staff resignations and staff shortages, a failure on the part of the council to consider diverse approaches to solving critical problems, and a lack of kindness and civility. How do you plan to serve as mayor given these apparent myriad workplace challenges? And we'll start with Adina.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, I have learned politics the nonpartisan way. So when we talk about civility and making sure we're hearing people and approaching them in a kind way, that is something that I learned from over a decade of working with the League of Women Voters. I also want to mention I was vice president of the California State League of Women Voters as well. And when it comes to key staff resignations, this is exactly why I'm running, because we have a city that has fallen into instability. We actually, even though these issues that I've mentioned are so important, our biggest threat to our city being fully functioning is our lack of staff. So many staff have quit. They don't feel respected. They don't feel heard. When I mentioned diversity earlier, that is also a problem that the city has when it comes to treating our employees with respect. So I know how to treat people with respect and work with folks from all different backgrounds, and that is something that I will bring as mayor.
Next, we'll go to Kate.
Yes. We have seen an incredible loss of staff, but it's not because of arguments within the council. It's because our city administration has failed to honor our labor contracts, frankly. We offered a change in our retirement system. We offered simple things like commute benefits, and the city manager, who's now gone, held that up for years. Our staff were depressed. I see some staff people here now. They felt that they had reached an agreement with us, and I see a union leader nodding, reached an agreement with the council, and then we're not allowed to carry that through. We have to fix that first and foremost. Our people are the way we run government. Government is 95% about employees, and if we don't treat them right, they are going to leave. I think our salary and benefits are adequate. The problem is more about the sense of belonging to the city. While our former city manager often said, one city, one team, she was not seen as sincere in believing that. We have a new city manager. This is the world I come from, is supervising 60 to 100 people, and I know how to bring people together, and I'm looking forward to that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Sophie?
So first, I just want to say that our city is a stressed organization, but it is not unique. If you just look on your phone and Google staffing shortages, you will see that cities across California and the nation are facing these same challenges. So it's not that there's something uniquely bad going on here. This is a challenge being faced across the country. But it's still our problem to solve here. So first of all, we need to staff up. And I want to say that I am also on the board of our libraries. And in our library, we had more than 25% staff shortages coming out of the pandemic, and we have systematically hired to the point we have almost no vacancies. So I know how to build back an organization. We also need to transform into a 21st century workplace. We did not have flex time. We did not have work at home. We don't have paid family leave. There's a lot of things that we need to do to attract a young and diverse workforce. We had an aging workforce. A lot of our policies were directed that way. Now we have a young workforce. We need to shift how we organize our workplace.
Thank you, Sophie. Next question. What policy proposals would you introduce to support economic development and small businesses in the district? And we'll start with Sophie.
Well, thank you. This is an area where I've done a lot of work. And by the way, I am also a former small business owner myself, so I have personal experience with this. First of all, I want us to waive fees and taxes for new businesses in their first year. San Francisco has this program, and I think it's the least we can do to attract businesses to come here. Secondly, I would like our economic development department to do more affirmative outreach. There are wonderful locally owned shops and businesses in Berkeley that might be able to open a second location, and there are others that are in the area. They're successful. They're already established. They know how to run a business. We need to be going out and inviting them to come into our city. But most importantly, I want us to invest in the public realm. We need to widen sidewalks, put in benches and trees, good lighting. We ask people to establish businesses in Berkeley, but we don't do anything for them. And that is particularly true of our downtown. which has been left to completely deteriorate. And fixing our downtown is my top priority.
Next, let's hear from Adina.
Yeah, this is great because I have a whole plan specifically to support small businesses. And I talk about similar things: public safety, lighting, making sure that we are serving our unhoused population so that they aren't having mental health crises in the middle of the street and no one is there to help them. I also want to make sure we are streamlining our permit processes, which is something that the Office of Economic Development has been working on. And we also need to be encouraging the partnerships that already exist between the Office of Economic Development, Visit Berkeley, the Chamber of Commerce, and many of our business associations throughout the city. There's so much great work that's being done, and I think the city can do a better job in supporting what already exists. We used to have so many events in the city, and that would bring a lot of folks downtown and bring a lot of people into our different business districts. This is something we can also encourage. How many of you missed the Kite Festival? That was something I used to go to every year with my family, and that's something that I think we can bring back again. Thank you so much.
All right, Kate.
I love all of those ideas, but frankly, the cause of much of this is unbridled development. We see a pattern of development of large buildings, and the tenants are kicked out, and then the builder doesn't go ahead. I saw this specifically for the missing link on my block. I've seen it in businesses throughout the city where the builder says, we're going to build, and now you leave because we don't want any tenants here, and we're left with nothing but a shell. San Pablo, the city of San Pablo, requires that when you get permission to build, you have to get your building permits within a year, or you don't get to build the project. If you want to build housing, fabulous, bring it on. But if you are just going to come and speculate on our property, kick out all of our small businesses, and treat our downtown as a shell, I don't accept that. We can also encourage the city to pass a vacancy tax for businesses like I did with residences. We have an enormous number of vacancies, and it is not a normal pattern. This reflects speculation by big business. Thank you.
Okay, next question. What will be your approach to addressing our local affordable housing crisis and working on a regional level? And we're going to start with Adina.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I think our biggest challenge to building more affordable housing is having the money to pay for it. Affordable housing costs so much to build. Each unit costs a lot of money. And so we really need to make sure that we are identifying new sources of funding. On this ballot this year, we were supposed to have a 9-county Bay Area measure, and unfortunately, it was removed. And that prevented us from being able to have a lot of the funding that we needed to be able to build more affordable housing. I want to talk a little bit about Measure O, which was an affordable housing bond that we passed in the city. The mayor and I worked very hard on this measure. We actually held a forum on Measure O here in this room so that people could learn about it and ask their questions. It was very important that we passed that measure. It brought us over $300 million for affordable housing and has funded many of our affordable housing projects throughout the city. I want to make sure we have affordable housing in every Berkeley neighborhood. This is something that's essential. For so many years, we weren't able to build enough affordable housing. And our families, teachers, and people who work in the city are struggling because of it. So thank you.
Next, Sophie.
Thank you. Housing affordability is the biggest issue our city faces. And it drives other things: homelessness, food insecurity, and a lot of challenges that people face in our community. No one has done more to advance affordable housing in Berkeley than I have. I appreciate the help on Measure O. I actually wrote it and got it on the ballot. I wrote the ballot argument that Adina very nicely signed as head of the League of Women's Voters. And this is not $300 million, it's $135 million. It's the largest bond measure in Berkeley's history, and it's for affordable housing. That has resulted in us funding and opening the doors to more than 1,000 affordable units in Berkeley. I am also the strongest proponent of land trust cooperative affordable housing, and I recently secured $10 million to buy and preserve housing that already exists in Berkeley and make sure that we can also retain the people who already live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate?
First and foremost, we need to keep the affordable units we have. This is why I was the co-sponsor of the demolition ordinance, which required that developers pay to replace units that were rent-controlled or below market rate. We also need generally to promote these land trusts. We have done a lot in Berkeley with that, but we can do more with those funds. At the same time, we need to recognize, again, that one of the reasons we don't have affordability is market displacement. Many larger landlords, and I do distinguish between large and small landlords, are driving out tenants through rent evictions. They're building around them. They're taking their parking. They're taking their garden. They're taking their laundry room. And when that older person says, well, I guess I have to leave, they are never coming back. We can give them relocation benefits. They will not be living in Berkeley. We will not have the city we have today. We also need to discuss what is affordable, really. We throw this term around loosely. What we need to do at our BART stations in particular is make sure that we have housing all the way from very low income up through moderate. Working people need a place to live, and we produce zero of that in Berkeley. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next question. With regard to the city's aging infrastructure, what is the city doing right and what should be improved upon? And we'll start with Kate.
Yes. I was asked by the mayor to be on the 2050 Infrastructure Commission because I had worked on the waterfront after the freeway fell down during Loma Prieta, and we created that whole beautiful waterfront in San Francisco. We need, first of all, a plan, which the mayor did help develop. We need funding streams, which we did through T1. But we also need measures that help maintain our infrastructure and not just build new infrastructure. Our failure has been to keep up. In 2008, we stopped investing, way before any of us were here, or the current mayor, stopped investing in our infrastructure. We decided that because of the recession, we had to pull money out of that. And we never replaced it till I got on the budget committee and said, why is this money still at a level of 15 years ago? We need to not be doing that. We need to be saying, how do we keep up with inflation? How do we build the roads we need? How do we build the parks? Emeryville's building a brand new park. We have not done that in years. Our focus needs to be squarely on our $1 billion infrastructure deficit, and we need to start now. Thank you.
Sophie, let's go to you.
Well, thank you. A lot of our infrastructure in Berkeley is about 100 years old, and it turns out that concrete has about a 100-year life. Our old city hall is about 100 years old. And a lot of what we all have enjoyed for a long time here in Berkeley is thanks to major investments that were made by generations before us. Yes, things have been under-maintained, but quite frankly, some things also come to the end of their useful life. And this generation is going to have to make another big investment to build a 21st century city. And that is going to involve probably bonds. The Measure L, which more than 50% of people approved, but needed a 2/3 majority, had money for us to not just do our roads and sidewalks, but also to redo our public buildings, our parks, our marina. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to do that again. I am committed to revitalizing our city. We own 30% of the landmass in Berkeley. We have allowed it to deteriorate. It's time for us to make major investments and build a 21st century city.
Adina.
Yes, so what is our city doing well? I think it's great that we're adding more physical safety features to the streets, making the streets more narrow, adding more striping, lights, things like that. Bike safety, this is very important, and I'm glad that we're doing it. And what aren't we doing well? I know that former Councilmember Harrison had mentioned that their city council was not responsible for the disinvestment in our streets, but that was a continuation of the disinvestments in our streets. We needed to make sure that we were spending the money back then, because now it costs more money for labor, more money for supplies, and we're going to have to pay that out of our own pockets. So that's something that we needed to be doing better, is to continuously invest in our infrastructure as we go. And I just want to address something that was said earlier about me. I think it's important not to minimize the work of actually door knocking and passing a measure, because it's really tough work to get out there. And, signing your name on something isn't the only thing that I was responsible for Measure O. I was very involved in running that campaign. I was on the ground doing that work. So just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Adina. Next question. In your perspective, why has downtown struggled to bounce back, and what is your plan to revitalize our communal spaces? And we'll start with Sophie.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
Sorry.
In your perspective, why has downtown struggled to bounce back, and what is your plan to revitalize our communal spaces?
Well, first of all, I think it's a shame that it's been allowed to deteriorate to the state where it is. We lost all 3 of our movie theaters. And then unfortunately, downtown lost its council member. And so I literally have had to step in. I saved Aurora Theater. They were going to go under. I'm working now to try and get a new theater in the California Theater location. And so you need strong representation. You need a big vision. I cannot wait to be mayor because for my entire life I've been waiting, because I grew up here and I've been living here most of my life, to revitalize our downtown. So what do I think we need? I think we need to pedestrianize to the greatest extent possible. We need to widen our sidewalks. We need landscaping, areas for children, little child play areas, tables to play chess and to sit down and have a coffee. I think we need lighting. We need street musicians. We need cafes. We need trees. We need to have a people and commerce-oriented downtown where we can all gather together as a community.
Thank you, Sophie. Next, let's hear from Kate.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, business types change. And while I was involved in the lawsuit to save the Shattuck Cinema, that was ultimately not successful because the theaters decided to leave. So referencing what the downtown was like a long time ago doesn't really help us. We have to think about new business types. This is one thing I did on the business commission with the mayor, is determine that we could have entertainment venues that were a little bit more active, like escape rooms, axe throwing. Sounds scary, but still it's a thing. We need to create active retail. People are not shopping the way that they used to. To get people to come downtown, you need active activities. I also took what's known as the Streets and Open Space Improvement Fund and have allocated that money to improve Herald Way, to make it a pedestrian plaza. We redesigned under my leadership all of Shattuck, so it didn't have that crazy dog leg. You can go straight up and down Shattuck now. We've added street trees along the entire length of University. And through working with the Downtown Business Association, I created a business recovery plan, and we created a lot of arts funding for the downtown area, which is why you see so many festivals today in the downtown. Thank you.
All right, Adina.
Yeah, so I've already mentioned a lot of my plan to support our businesses, especially in the downtown area. I've talked about events. I've talked about serving our unhoused population. I've talked about public safety and lighting. I also just want to highlight something that's already happening that's really great, which is the Downtown Berkeley Streets team. And so they are working on helping to keep the downtown area clean, and they actually work with folks that are unhoused. They also provide them with services and something to do as a way to be involved in the community, and I think that's been very valuable. I also just want to comment on something that was said earlier about businesses and development in the downtown. So many of the businesses that I've spoken to are actually very excited about the development and excited about the housing that's being built, because what happens is we have many students who live in the downtown, and when they're away for winter and summer break, the businesses really suffer. They're not able to get as many students, and because of the pandemic, many people are working from home and not working from their offices in downtown. So building more housing in downtown will actually help us and help support our businesses and create a more thriving downtown.
Thank you. Okay. For the next question, we'll start with Kate. What would you do in your position to address the houseless and homeless population in Berkeley?
We need to recognize that just putting somebody in an anonymous unit is not going to work. Many of the hotels we bought are not successful because people do not stay there. They have no services. They eat cold food in their rooms. They're told no one can visit. I would leave that situation as well. So as we deal with the encampments that we see that do affect our business and businesses and neighbors, we need to also have a solution for tomorrow. Just moving someone into an environment they're not going to stay at is not a success. The quoted 45% reduction in homelessness reflects the number of people we've housed, not the number of people who have stayed housed. I don't know about you, but when I look at 8th and Harrison, I don't see a big reduction in homelessness. We need to bring back our sanctioned encampment, which I built at Grayson, which had parking for RVs. Many of those people moved on successfully in their lives. We need to build shelters like the Veterans Building in my district, in District 4, which has successfully housed people with no complaints from our neighbors. But we need to think about people as whole people and what will give them the housing they need to stay housed. Otherwise, they'll just be in front of your house tomorrow.
Thank you, Kate. Let's go to Adina next.
Yes. So I met with this group called Beautiful San Pablo, and they asked me, what is your idea of success for the unhoused population? And I think that they were expecting me to say, well, for them to get housed. And the thing is, actually, it's so much more than that. It's actually making sure that they're integrated and involved in our city, and that they feel like they are welcomed community members and not just treated as separate. That is important to me, and that is the vision that I have for serving our unhoused population. We need to make sure that we're helping to provide support in the transition, that we're providing mental health support, that we're providing support for drug addiction, that we are providing shelters for specific populations, especially those who have experienced domestic violence, human trafficking. I have been told that there are families who have been told that it's easier for them to separate if they want to get housing, and that's absolutely not right. We need to be keeping families together, and they need to feel safe in the places that they are being in. As I mentioned earlier, there was a shooting in one of our shelters. We need to make sure that shelters are a safer and more welcoming place than living on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Sophie?
Yes, well, first of all, I have visited every single shelter and been working directly with homeless people for my entire 8 years on this city council. I also wrote a blueprint for ending homelessness in Berkeley, which is why we have reduced unsheltered homelessness by 45%. Now, of course, that still means there's a lot of people languishing on our streets, but we have to recognize this is the best outcome of any heavily impacted city that I've ever heard of in the entire state. So what we're doing is working, and I want to tell you what it consists of. First, it's 4 things. 1, you have to keep housed people housed. We have invested in housing retention like no other city has invested. 2, you need the actual housing for people to go to, which is why I wrote Measure O, and we got it passed with the help of the community, and so we actually have places to house people. 3, you need an unbroken chain of state-of-the-art services and facilities. Yes, we don't always have everything perfect, but we have a lot in place. And last but not least, you have to manage dignity on the streets. We're doing that as well. We need to do more, but it is working.
Thank you. Next question. Some voters feel there is a lack of transparency and don't know how the city is spending its funding. Do you agree or disagree that there is a transparency problem? And if there is, what steps will you take to address it? And we will start with Adina.
Yes, I absolutely believe that there's a transparency problem. It's a huge talking point for me. Accountability and transparency. Accountability and transparency. As I've already said many times with the League of Women Voters, this is something that we're focused on. Keeping our eye on government and making sure that they're spending money the way that they said they were going to spend the money. We pass things in this city, measures, and we trust that our city government is going to spend that money where they say they're going to spend it. And at the end of the day, it's very unclear where the money's going. If you take a look at the budget on the city website, it is so many pages. I have a business degree. I studied business at the Haas School of Business, and I feel like going through it, it's an arduous task. The average person needs to be able to take a look at this budget and understand what's going on and be able to clearly see this is the tax money, this is where it went to. It should be as simple as that. And we can't have the expectation that you have a degree to be able to understand these processes.
Next, let's hear from Sophie.
Thank you very much. So, first of all, I just want to say that our city is not misusing your funds. Our city is quite scrupulous. The problem is that you don't know about it. The problem is what we communicate. I asked, and I know that a former council member, Harrison, will attest to this. We both did. We begged the city manager, please, please get a better communications department. All we do is press releases, long, 2-page long things. The city is terrible at communicating. Our new city manager, I believe, who I helped recruit, agrees that this is a problem, and I'm hoping that it's going to change. We also need a much better website. Our city did a new website. They went from 16,000 pages to 500. I wrote an item. I forced the city manager to put more information back on our website. And the way that information is presented is terrible. It's inaccessible. So I just want you to know your city is doing the right thing, but they're not good at telling you about it. And that is something that I am intent on changing.
Thank you. Kate?
Yes, well, I can't agree with that. When the soda tax came to the Budget Committee and the administration showed a vast amount of it going to administration. I had real issues with that. They are not doing the right thing with all of their money. They didn't do it with Measure P, which they're spending on ambulance transport for non-homeless people, even though you voted for it for homeless services. And I spent the 7 years on council using my budget expertise, helping to explain to the public what was happening, to look at things like police overtime. I don't want to deny the police the overtime they need, but we do need to say, why are they sitting outside the Apple store? To look at this budget in a really intensive way and understand what the city is doing. We have a lack of transparency from our administration. 5 minutes, I was on the committee for 7 years, 5 minutes before every budget committee, we would get a 1,500-page packet and be told, well, you're going to have to print that yourself. Good luck. This is not okay. And those packets come through the agenda committee on which Councilmember Hahn served, and we were allowing them to continually give us bad information. That's the first job of the mayor, is to stop that and say, you don't give us the information we need, we're not voting on that today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. For our next question, we'll go to Sophie first. Some residents question whether commission recommendations are seriously considered by the City Council. Do you think this is a problem? And if so, what changes would you propose making?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I think it's really a shame for people to cast so many aspersions on our city. We are not absolutely perfect, but we are very, very good. And I don't like the axe throwing. Yes, we have problems to solve. Of course we do. So, commission recommendations. I am working right now, as I mentioned before, on an entire system redesign for how we develop and bring legislation forward to passage in the city. And a big part of that is to understand how are we going to fold our commissions in a more meaningful way. I also think we need to provide better training for the commissions. They need a much shorter path to getting their recommendations in front of council. The way it is right now, there's a long, long delay from when they take action to when things come to us, and sometimes we've already taken action on the same topic. So I am fully supportive of integrating our commissions in a more prompt and meaningful way, and I look forward to doing that as your next mayor.
Thank you, Sophie. Let's hear from Kate.
Yeah, again, the commissions often will be asked to report on something, like our fire commission is supposed to tell us how to spend our Measure FF money. But they get the report that day, and they're told, we don't really have any time for you to think about this, so they're not able to even get us their input. This happens repeatedly at several commissions, like the Parks Commission. We've also seen a combination of commissions which has created too much of a workload for many of them. We combined transportation and public works. I was the only council member to vote against that consolidation because it's simply too big of an ambit for them to deal with. So they are not doing their job, not their fault, but they cannot deal with the millions of infrastructure issues we have. We do not know, the city manager has not informed us when a report has come from a commission. I've asked repeatedly for a list of when did you get that? When are you planning to report back? What are the standards for giving a companion report from your office? These are all things that the mayor, who chairs the agenda committee, needs to insist on. And we need to come back to the idea that these commissions play a valuable role in our city.
Thank you, Kate. Adina.
Can you repeat the question, please? I missed a couple words in the first part.
Sure.
Thank you.
Some residents question whether commission recommendations are seriously considered by the City Council. Do you think this is a problem? And if so, what changes would you propose making?
Yes, absolutely. I do think this is a problem. I served on the Soda Tax Commission for 3 years, and it took us a very long time just to get the information that we needed. I think it took maybe a year, maybe over, just to get the data that we needed to be able to make some of the decisions we wanted to make. And so it did leave us feeling like we weren't really being heard, even though we were able to send our report and our recommendations, and I believe that they were all accepted. I think that there needs to be a process where the council members and the mayor are actually hearing from the commissioners that they've appointed. I only met with my appointee, or as the appointee, I only met with the person who appointed me one time in 3 years. And that to me is an issue. If we have these commissions as a way to engage with the public and to make sure that we're hearing from our constituents, we need to make sure that we are actively engaging with those commissions. We need to make sure that we know our commissioners. And I think it's important that we are listening to them because they were appointed in the first place. These are oftentimes the experts of these issues, and we need to be hearing from them.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Kate first. It took close to 2 years for the Police Accountability Board to complete its investigation and recommendations concerning the bike unit scandal. What would you do to foster a culture in which the PAB has more timely access to critical information to complete investigations in a reasonable length of time?
First of all, I would demand the city administration follow the charter amendment that I wrote and that you passed with 85% of the vote. We have seen an active campaign to not give our PAB the information that they've requested. We've seen a campaign to slow down their processes by not allowing them to meet. We've seen denial of records, for example, phone records from this bike scandal. It took the 2 years you mentioned, and the report came back with very different findings than what was found by city administration. The league itself has supported the recent report from the PAB saying we want a PAB that can do investigations on its own, that can get records without having to threaten to go to court, which is what they had to do, that can make sure that the rules are effective and their permanent rules are passed. They've been in abeyance for over 2 years while there is a lot of back and forth about how they are supposed to operate. We need an independent civilian body. We have a good group of people that we all selected collectively, which is really important to the way I wrote this. These aren't individuals. These are our appointees as a group. We need to stand up for them.
Thank you. Sophie?
Well, I think that strong police oversight is part of a virtuous circle. We have a good police department. People sometimes say, well, we don't need police oversight. And the answer is we have that because we have strong police oversight, just like we have checks and balances in the federal government, right? That tension is built in so that we can have good systems. So I strongly support this, and 85% of the public did as well. But unfortunately, there were some things that were missing from what was put on the ballot and passed. We need the Police Accountability Board is basically a brand new agency for the city and is directly below the city council. It's not part of the city manager's administration. They need to have their own attorney. They need to have independent counsel. They need to be able to start their own investigations. They absolutely need full access to records. This is something where Kate and I have been very much on the same page. But I think most importantly is that we need council members who actually respect and listen to our Police Accountability Board. And unfortunately, I think I'm pretty much the last one.
Thank you. Adina?
I agree that the Police Accountability Board is an essential body in our city. We need to make sure that we have these checks and balances, as Councilmember Hahn has said. And I do support the report as well that came out recently from the PAB that the League of Women Voters supports as well. One thing I want to comment on that I think is important is, I just mentioned the Soda Tax Commission. We weren't able to get the information. It's the same problem with PAB, not getting the information that you need to be able to make the decisions that you're tasked with and responsible for. How are we supposed to be able to do our jobs if we aren't able to have the information to do them? So I very much understand this from a personal perspective. And I also want to say that I think at the same time, we want to make sure that we're very careful with the information that's getting released if it has anything to do with people's addresses, because our law enforcement officers do need to have their identities protected, and that is one piece of it that I am concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Do you favor hybridizing all of the commission and standing committee meetings for those who can't attend in person? And we'll go to Adina first.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the first part of your...
Yeah, sorry. Do you favor making all of the commission and standing committee meetings hybrid, both virtual and in person?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. It's so important. I mean, when we talk about accessibility, even the fact that we have an interpreter here in this room is amazing. I love that. And I love that the League, so far, is the only forum that has provided a sign language interpreter, an ASL interpreter here. So that is so important. And this is something when it comes to hybrid forums, there are folks who are not able to leave their homes. And we want them to still be engaged in our city government, especially as our city moves towards becoming an aging city. We want to make sure that we are an age-friendly city and that we are making sure that we are allowing folks to engage in their democracy and engage in our systems as they age, or if they're struggling with a disability where they're not able to leave their homes. So I absolutely support hybridizing these meetings. Thank you for the question.
Okay. Kate?
Yes, absolutely. And more than that, we need to film the meetings. The only meetings that currently are filmed are the Zoning Adjustment Board and the PAB. Our Planning Commission makes major decisions about our city and makes recommendations to us, and it is not being recorded at all. Our own Disability Commission had to sue the city to request an exception to this rule that they had to appear in person, and they are people with disabilities. We have got to fix this. It is essential. We also need to make these recordings available to the public. We will have commission recordings that are made, for example, at ZAB, and they're not easy to access. So even if there's some taping, it's not effective access for our public. So we can do this technologically. We all know we can do Zoom. We can do these things. There's absolutely no reason not to do it.
Thank you, Kate. Sophie?
Well, I think we're all in agreement here. Of course, I support moving to hybrid for all of our commission and all of our committee meetings. I strongly support open government, and it's one of the very few tiny silver linings of the pandemic is that we all learned that we could do this, and it greatly, greatly increases access for the community to be able to participate virtually. So we've already allocated money to do this, and the challenge, just so people understand, is one, we don't have the equipment. And it's expensive. But two, we have 44 commissions, and they don't have regular meeting rooms. So they meet at senior centers. They meet all over the city. And for us to outfit all those locations with all the AV and audio equipment to be able to do these interactive virtual meetings, it just hasn't happened yet. But the commitment is there. We've already referred it to be funded, and it should be happening hopefully in the next year, maybe year and a half, we'll get there. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Sophie. And we'll start with you, Sophie, on this next question. How do you plan to work with your colleagues and community stakeholders to ensure senior citizens do not become homeless or left to live in poorly maintained housing in Berkeley?
Thank you for that question. We are an aging community. Despite the fact that the university keeps adding young people, the average age in Berkeley is going up. So focusing on the well-being of seniors is extremely important for me as your next mayor. And this is one aspect, which is that many seniors are extremely vulnerable to becoming homeless. In fact, that is one of the largest groups of people who are becoming homeless, not just here, but across the nation. So, first of all, housing retention. People who are currently housed, we are doing everything we can to keep them housed. We have already funded the East Bay Community Law Center and other law partners. If you are low income and you are facing eviction in Berkeley, you get free legal services. Two, we need to continue with our strong rent and eviction controls. So this is another key element of keeping people, seniors and others, housed. The best thing to do is to make sure that the people who are housed don't become homeless. And that is why I have made such a big commitment to housing retention.
Thank you. Adina?
This question is very personal for me. I'm someone whose father was diagnosed with early onset dementia from the time that I was 8 years old. And I'll tell you that I think that many of the folks who live on the street have a similar type of dementia that impacts behavior and ability to care for oneself. My father used to say to me before he got very sick that he was going to end up on the street. And he was worried about that because we didn't have the kind of services that we're able to provide for him. And our city passed an age-friendly Berkeley plan in 2018 when it was supposed to be implemented. And as far as I can tell, we have not done a single thing on that plan. So when we're talking about concern about our seniors facing homelessness, where was this plan? Homelessness is a part of that plan, and we need to make sure that we're reassessing that age-friendly plan, which I know the city is working on, and making sure that we're actually implementing that plan so that we can make sure that we're preventing our senior citizens from ending up on the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate?
My own mother, who worked as a teacher for decades, faced housing discrimination in Berkeley because we do not run a lottery for our senior housing buildings. We require seniors or their family to go to every single building and apply, and she never got in and then died. So this is what we're doing. We are not coordinating services for our seniors. We are not building housing above senior centers as recommended by Councilmember Wengraf and I. We need to do that because people need to be close to the services they need. They need food services that are better integrated. They need social services that they can access. We have been very successful in improving transportation services for seniors. But it's not just enough to just give someplace a place to live. They have to have the services or they cannot survive. There also is a major issue involving the use of our sidewalks by seniors when bikes and scooters are riding on the sidewalks. This is a huge issue for public safety that we must tackle. We cannot allow our seniors to feel threatened when they're simply walking down the street. They won't be able to live here if we don't stop these practices.
Thank you. Next question. What are your plans to advocate for the younger generation, also considering the large demographic of college students you are serving? And let's start with Adina.
Yes, I love this question because civic engagement is really what kept me involved in school. As I said, I was working 3 jobs when I was here. I was really struggling to make it, and getting involved in the community is really what kept me activated and engaged. So I think it's so important that we offer programs through the city. We need to have youth programming. It's actually part of my public safety platform. And I also want to make sure that the city provides opportunities for paid internships across all departments. I think that there's a huge opportunity there to streamline that process, make sure everyone's receiving the same training, the same amount of money, and also opportunities to reflect on the work that they've been doing so that they can better be trained for opportunities to work in the future and maybe even work for our city. I think that we have so many opportunities to support art and music programs and also civic engagement programs so that folks can get involved and we can start them getting pre-registered to vote at 16. Like they're able to right now vote. Many people don't know 16 and 17-year-olds can vote for school board this year. That's something that I worked very hard on as president of the League of Women Voters, and I'm looking forward to that happening this year.
Thank you, Adina. Let's hear from Sophie.
Well, some people act like young people are, the responsibility of the university or BUSD. And I just want to say that I believe every young person in this community is the responsibility of all of us. And our city needs to take a bigger role in that. But yes, internships. I've had interns. I hire young people. I've worked with young people at the university on my plastics ordinance. But really, those are kind of nibbling around the edge. When you say, how will we advocate for younger generations, there's 2 things. 1, housing, housing, housing. They need places to live. We have to have housing so that young people can move into our community and establish and live here. But the second thing is that we need to save the planet. We are leaving literally a scorched earth for our children. And so, yes, we need to do we need to include young people. We need to have their voices. We need to give them opportunities. But we have to tackle the big existential issues that our young people face.
Thank you. Kate.
I think we need to work with young people to tackle those challenges. So, for example, I worked with Berkeley High students on trying to make sure that we had healthy food at checkout counters. So when they got their half hour at lunch, they could get something from the counter that was going to serve them. I worked with students at BCC to make sure that we added 2 youth to our climate commission because it is their future. I worked with students at Cal on both B-City USA and on eliminating the non-compostable bags in the back of your grocery store so everything is composted. I've had paid internships the entire time I've been on council, and right now 1 council member that's currently there worked on a commission with me, and I've appointed people that have now moved on to 3 rent board commissioners and council members in other cities. We have to encourage young people, not say, we're going to do this for you. We need to work with them. Their ideas, I'm not the smartest person in the room. Actually, they are. They come to me with ideas, and I help implement them. And the final thing I'll say is about the Berkeley High mental health system, which I added the mental health center after being told by youth at Berkeley High that they had no services. So listening to them is number 1.
Thank you. And this will be our last question before we go to closing statements. And we're going to start with Kate, and then Sophie, and then Adina for this question. How will you ensure that the council works for the people and not divided over ideological issues?
Was I starting?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. I don't think that's completely possible. I know we talk a lot about how we need to get along, which is really important, but we do have different points of view, and that's the beauty of government. We don't have to share a common idea coming in. We need to work to understand each other and why we have these differences of opinion and work towards a solution that works for most people. I think it's kind of a not possible to say we're going to eliminate all the differences. I don't think the unanimity of votes is what matters. I think the quality of discussion is what matters. I think we do need to insist on comity and that people, comity, not comedy, and that people work with each other and their constituents with respect. But I don't want to be with colleagues that all agree with me. That's who I learn from, are the people that have different ideas. I have learned so much being on this council about new ideas about housing, transportation, which is why I support Safe Streets today, because people had different ideas. I've learned about police reform from other people. We're not going to come in all agreeing. I don't think that's our goal. Our goal is a government that brings this together beautifully to benefit the people.
Thank you. Sophie.
Well, thank you. I am on the council, and I work with all my colleagues. I've done legislation with every single member of the city council. But I will agree with Kate that, it's another one of those sort of built-in tension things. We are supposed to have a diversity of opinions. However, that does not mean that we have to be disagreeable. So, to the greatest extent possible as mayor, I want to listen to every single representative that people send to the council. When the people have spoken, as mayor, I need to listen to all of their representatives, and I need to try to the greatest extent possible to find the largest common ground and see if we can get to consensus. But we won't always be able to, and that is okay, because that's why you have 9 people on the board. If you were all in agreement all the time, you could just have 1, right? So I will be working to really listen to all the representatives sent to the council and doing my best to achieve consensus. But when we don't achieve it, I think we need to be polite and respectful. And people vote their conscience. So that's democracy.
Thank you, Adina.
League of Women Voters, nonpartisan, this is what I'm most comfortable with, working with people across differences. Similarly, we don't have to have the same ideas in mind, but we do need to be able to build compromise and be able to get behind common sense solutions. That's what I'm focused on. And I want to talk a little bit about my background as a community organizer. So something that I feel like our city is missing right now is joy. This is actually a value that we have on our campaign. There are so many people who see the city and they think about the government and they're like, oh my gosh, those 2 a.m. City council meetings. Oh my gosh, the failure of downtown, our streets and sidewalks. But there's so many opportunities that we can provide more joy in our city that I think we need to be doing a better job doing. I think there's opportunities for the council members to come together and to get to know each other so that they're able to work together and be able to find that compromise because they understand where they're coming from. And I also just want to put a little plug in for food. There's so many opportunities for us to break bread together. And I think that we could be doing that more, not only on the city council, but also within our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we hear closing statements, I have a few remarks on behalf of the League of Women Voters. Thank you to the candidates for running for office and for your participation this evening. I also want to thank the audience for engaging in our democracy. For further information about upcoming forums, the candidates, pros and cons, and positions on ballot measures, please visit the League's website, lwvbae.org or vote411.org. We invite you to join the League to help us engage voters and defend democracy. We do so much more than voter registration and education. You can visit our website and social media accounts at LWVBAE. The last day to register to vote is October 21st. You can register to vote online at the Secretary of State's website, sos.ca.gov. All California active registered voters will receive a vote-by-mail ballot for the November 5th, 2024 general election. Your county elections office will begin mailing ballots by October 7th. Vote-by-mail ballots can be returned by mail at a drop-off location or your county elections office. Ballot drop-off locations open on October 8th, 2024. Since Alameda County is a voter's choice county, vote centers will be open for early in-person voting beginning on October 26th. Vote by mail ballots must be postmarked on or before Election Day and received by November 12th, 2024. Now the candidates will make our closing statements, and we will reverse the order that we began with for opening statements. So we'll start with Adina. Oh,
No one selected them, or did I miss that?
Is that a single question on a ceasefire resolution for Palestine, not one question?
I mean, the league provided the questions that I asked. Is there a league member who wants to address that?
I think I'm a member, but I'll just say I think that I think that since
I am
you
too.
brought us to a close, I think that I'm happy to stay afterwards and answer any of your questions. For those of you who can't hear the questions from the audience, there is someone who's asking about an opportunity to ask other questions that weren't being answered before. So I think that all of us will stay afterwards, if that's all right, a little bit later, so that we can have conversations with folks if you have additional questions that didn't get answered. Thank you.
Okay.
Shall we go to closing?
Sure. Yes, I did say during the opening that if you had a question, you could raise your hand. But we'll go to close. We didn't get to ask all of the questions because we have a time limit, but you can feel free to talk with the candidates afterwards. We're going to go to closing statements now. Let's start with Adina.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I understand what a challenging job it is to be a moderator. I have been a moderator with the League of Women Voters on a number of candidate forums. In fact, I think actually for both of you, maybe. So, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters and to Berkeley City College and AAUW for hosting this candidate forum. It's so essential that we are reaching especially more young people and getting them involved in our local politics. This is really where we can make so much change. And as mayor, I want to say that it's important that we have a leader who doesn't blame staff and the city manager for the problems that we're experiencing here. I understand that the mayor is not able to tell staff what to do, and at the same time, the buck stops here. As the leader of the city, it's important that the mayor is able to take responsibility for the failures that we have. And we need to be able to say, this is where we need to be doing a better job. Today, we talked a lot about plans. As someone who has not served on the city council, I can tell you that I have plans that I want to accomplish, and I know that with the support of the city council members that are already endorsing me, as well as State Senator Nancy Skinner and State Assembly Member Buffy Wicks, that we will be able to achieve these plans. When my opponents are talking about their plans, they've already been on the city council, so you should be asking yourself, why haven't they accomplished those plans already? I am running a grassroots, people-powered campaign. I'm doing the public financing program, which means that Berkeley donations get matched ×6 by the city of Berkeley. And I know that right now I am focused on knocking doors and talking to voters because these forums are so important, but there are so many people that we're not reaching. We need a reset at City Hall. We need to make sure that we're bringing in fresh perspectives and that we're making a concerted effort to reach everybody in the community and make sure those voices are heard. Again, I'm focused on housing and homelessness, public safety, and infrastructure, and I hope to have your support this November. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Sophie.
Well, thank you again to tonight's organizers and to all of you for this opportunity. Progress takes more than good ideas. That's the easy part. And making progress as the mayor of a complex city like Berkeley is not for the untested or the faint of heart. Experience matters. Even with the best intentions and ideas, I'm telling you, no one can walk in cold with no experience on the council and get things right. And tenacity matters because, believe me, having managed our city through the Trump years and a global pandemic, things always get tough, but no matter what happens, you have to stay and fight. I have been working to support this community and our values my entire life. Achieving a truly equitable society where everyone has the opportunity and means to live their most authentic life is foundational to who I am and why I come to work for you every day on the City Council. In recognition of my leadership experience and tenacity, I am proud to be endorsed by Berkeley firefighters, Planned Parenthood, the League of Conservation Voters, Mom Demand Action for Gun Safety, the Jane Fonda Climate Pact, SEIU, California Nurses, 7 members of the City Council, including Mayor Adeguin, Vice Mayor Susan Wengraf, Council members Humbert, Taplin, Tregub, and Bartlett, Ohlone Tribal Chair Karina Gould, school board members Khadijah Brown, Laura Babbitt, and Mike Chain, the mayors of Albany, Emeryville, Alameda, and Oakland's Libby Shaft, and more than 100 elected officials and leaders across the Bay Area. Most importantly, I have the largest grassroots campaign in our city's history. I am supported by more than 1,000 people who have endorsed and contributed to our campaign. I would be honored to be your next mayor, and you can count on me to continue leading our city with dedication, passion, and an unwavering belief in the progress that we can achieve together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Kate.
I want to start by thanking the League again and my fellow candidates. You'll hear a lot of discussion about who's endorsed whom from the Berkeley City Council, but notably the Democratic Party, which is made up of electeds from the entire county, chose not to endorse in this race because we have very different visions about what we want to see for our city, and they couldn't come to a decision. That means this election is really up to you. I am proud, though, to have earned the endorsements of people who provide direct services for the most vulnerable among us, including the California Nurses Nurses Association and the California Democratic Renters Council, from people who lead community-based environmental organizations, people that educate our children, such as George Lakoff, Anna Vasudev, the president of our school board, and members of neighboring school boards. Those who insist on racial equity, former state senator Sandra Swanson, and board members of Latinos Unidos and the NAACP. Hundreds of Berkeley residents and businesses who I have worked with every day to make their life better have come out in support of me. I'm participating in public financing because my support will come from you. I'm responsible only to you, not to any outside interests. You're the people who are going to decide this election. I'm not taking money from people outside of Berkeley, and I'm not beholden to special interests like biotech, real estate, or venture capitalists. As mayor, I will address the issues affecting all of Berkeley, from the hills to the waterfront, homeowners to tenants, and students to seniors. I know how to bring people together to pass groundbreaking legislation, and more importantly, make changes in your daily life, something we haven't talked about enough on this dais tonight. At a debate last night, Sophie Hahn said that the mayor is only one of 9 and their hands are tied on critical issues. I don't agree with that. The mayor is much more than one vote. The mayor sets the agenda, sets the budget, and sets the tone. We need leadership and vision, a leader with vision, willing to make the hard choices. Finally, we need a mayor who will listen to you. I will not hide in back rooms, and together we can create a livable Berkeley for all. Thank you very much.
May I have an
Kate.
opportunity to respond to a direct attack? That is actually incorrect.
No, we're ending this now. But if you all have questions that you would like to ask the candidates after this, we are able to stay in here until 8:15. But thank you all for coming, and thank you to the candidates.